What's the most grown-up thing you've had to do before turning 18 that no one ever acknowledged? When I was 15, my grandfather Charlie moved into our house after his Parkinson's got too severe for him to live alone. Within days, my parents were fighting about money. Dad insisted his brothers should contribute more. Mom complained about medical bills piling up. My siblings, Alice and Gianna, made excuses to stay away from his room. The first week, I noticed Grandpa sitting alone all day. No one checked on him except to bring meals, which they'd leave on his table with barely a word. Friday evening, I found his lunch untouched beside him. He couldn't hold the fork steady enough to eat. I sat down and helped him eat. His hands trembled as he tried to thank me. After that, I started checking on him 3 times a day. No one asked me to. I just couldn't stand seeing him alone and helpless. Before school, I'd help Grandpa get dressed and take his medications. Afternoons, I'd bring tea and read the newspaper to him since his hands shook too much to hold the pages. At night, I'd help him to the bathroom and make sure he was comfortable. My parents were too busy arguing about money to notice. Dad slammed doors during calls with his brothers. He would shout about how Grandpa needed full-time care. Mom took extra shifts, leaving notes about dinner instead of cooking. During Thanksgiving, family gathered, but Grandpa stayed in his room. I made him a plate and sat with him while everyone ate in the dining room. Through the walls, we heard my parents arguing with my uncles about hospice costs. Grandpa squeezed my hand and whispered, "You see me." In December, Grandpa fell trying to reach the bathroom at night. I found him on the floor, unable to get up. I put a pillow under his head and covered him while I woke Dad. He grumbled about being woken, helped Grandpa back to bed, then went straight back to sleep. After that, I moved my mattress to Grandpa's floor. Friends stopped inviting me out because I always said no. I missed the winter dance and birthday parties. No one noticed my absence from family dinners because I ate with Grandpa in his room. By January, Grandpa couldn't speak clearly. His words slurred, and sometimes he'd stare at nothing for hours. The hospice nurse came twice weekly, showing me how to change his sheets while he was still in bed and how to check if he was in pain when he couldn't tell me. One night, he had trouble breathing. I called for my parents, but they'd gone out to dinner. Alice was supposed to be watching him, but was on the phone with her boyfriend. I called 911 myself. At the hospital, the doctor asked who was his primary caregiver. Everyone looked at me. February brought worse tremors. Grandpa couldn't hold anything. I fed him every bite, held straws to his lips, and read to him even though I wasn't sure he understood. My grades dropped because I stayed up late doing homework after he fell asleep. My teacher called home about me falling asleep in class. Mom promised to handle the Grandpa situation, but nothing changed. That night, I overheard Mom telling Dad they couldn't afford a nurse and that the girls needed their own lives. In March, Grandpa stopped eating much. The hospice nurse said this was normal near the end. She showed me how to swab his mouth when it got dry. My parents discussed funeral arrangements in the kitchen, arguing about costs while I sat beside Grandpa holding his hand. During spring break, while my siblings went to a cousin's to escape the depressing atmosphere, I stayed home. Grandpa's breathing became irregular. The nurse said it wouldn't be long. On a Tuesday morning, I was reading his favorite Western when his breathing changed. I held his hand as it happened, just like the nurse described. He squeezed my fingers once, then his hand went slack. I sat there for 20 minutes before telling anyone. At the funeral, relatives praised my parents for caring for poor Charlie. My uncles made speeches about family duty. No one mentioned me except to say, "You must be sad about your grandpa." Afterward, I'd wake up reaching for a blanket that needed adjusting for someone who wasn't there. I'd make 2 cups of tea in the afternoons. My room felt too big with my mattress back. A month later, I heard Mom on the phone telling someone how relieved she was that it was over. She mentioned getting the insurance payout and how Christopher's brothers wanted to split it, but they argued they did all the work. Cleaning out Grandpa's things, I found journal. The final entry explained how I was the only one who saw him as a person, rather than a burden. He wrote that I was more adult than any of them. He mentioned leaving me his savings since they were all fighting over his insurance, but they didn't know about his separate account. He felt I deserved something for being the only one who cared if he died alone. I never told my parents about the account. The bank envelope arrived addressed to me on what would have been his birthday. Inside was access to enough for my college education, something my parents had been telling me we couldn't afford. The note read simply, "For the only adult in the house."